Clara leaned against the doorway, clutching a tablet tightly as if it held a crucial secret. The quiet atmosphere of Elon Musk's office was broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. The overhead lights cast a reflective glow on his immaculate desk, where Elon sat, engrossed in documents related to the Mars project. "Elon, you need to see this," Clara said, her voice low but firm enough to pierce the silence. Elon didn't look up. "If it's not about Mars, it can wait," he replied, as indifferent as ever. Clara took a deep breath. "It's not about Mars," she said, her tone heavier, more serious. "It's about someone who sees you as their hero." That caught his attention. He looked up, his sharp eyes fixing on Clara's face, as if assessing whether what she was about to share was worth disrupting his focus. Clara stepped forward, carefully placing the tablet on his desk. She pressed play and stepped back, observing the expression of the man the world saw as a symbol of technological innovation. The screen lit up, showing the image of a little girl, Lisa, as her mother had introduced her in the accompanying email. She lay on a hospital bed, her frail body appearing far too small for her age. A bright pink scarf wrapped around her bald head, framing her delicate face, but her eyes sparkled with an almost otherworldly vitality. "Hi, Mr. Musk," Lisa's voice rang out, faint but clear. "I'm Lisa, and I'm 9 years old. My dream is to go to Mars, but the doctors say I don't have enough time to wait for that." "That's okay." She paused, her fragile smile lighting up the screen. "I just want to meet you, even if it's just for a hug." Clara had watched the video dozens of times before showing it to Elon, but each time, it felt as though her heart was being squeezed. Now, in the silence of the room, she could see Elon's eyes glued to the screen, his fingers tightly interlocked on the desk. Clara had worked with Elon Musk for years, and she knew this man better than most. He was an unstoppable genius, driven by dreams so immense that they often eluded ordinary comprehension. He was the type of person employees often saw engrossed in seemingly impossible projects, his gaze perpetually fixed on the future. Yet he was also someone who seemed detached from ordinary emotions, almost to the point of being inscrutable. She had often wondered if anything in this world could truly reach him beyond numbers, designs, or his vision of Mars. When Clara first saw Lisa's video, a sharp pain pierced her chest. The gentle yet profound words of the little girl haunted her, compelling her to watch the video over and over, as if to remind herself that this story wasn't a dream or fabrication. But as she decided to bring the story to Elon, a part of her hesitated. Would he see it as a distraction? Would he dismiss it as something beyond his responsibility? Standing in the stillness of the office, Clara felt her heartbeat quicken as the video played. She glanced at Elon, wondering how he would react. But instead of the indifference she had feared, Clara noticed a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in his demeanor. He was no longer the man who hid his emotions behind a wall of cold rationality. His eyes were fixed intently on the screen, and his previously interlaced fingers now clenched tighter. "Is this real?" Elon asked, his voice low and hoarse, as if he were struggling to contain something within himself. The question stunned Clara for a moment. She hadn't expected to hear that tone from him, a tone that carried a vulnerability she had never associated with him before. She nodded, trying to steady her voice but unable to mask the emotion in it. "Her mother sent this through a charity. She has terminal cancer. She doesn't have much time left." Elon said nothing, but Clara could see the transformation on his face. His eyes remained on the screen, as though he wanted to memorize every detail: the pink scarf, Lisa's radiant eyes, her frail yet hopeful smile. This was no longer just a video on a tablet. It was a silent plea that had pierced straight into his heart. Clara felt a strange shift in the air, as if the entire room was holding its breath. She had never thought a 9-year-old girl, fragile and fading, could melt the icy barrier Elon seemed to wear around himself. But now she was witnessing it. After a long silence, Elon finally spoke, and Clara could hardly believe what she was hearing. "How soon can we make this happen?" he asked, his voice firm yet filled with urgency. Clara looked at him, her emotions swirling with a mix of surprise and something deeper admiration. She had always thought she understood Elon, a man who lived for distant futures and grand visions. But in this moment, she realized that even a man admired as a cold, calculating genius could put the dreams of a little girl before his own monumental ambitions. She nodded. "We can make it happen immediately. She doesn't have much time." And in that moment, Clara realized that the man before her wasn't just a genius or a leader. He was human, with a heart, and perhaps that heart was bigger than she had ever imagined. Clara sat quietly in the car, her eyes following the faint streaks of light from the street lamps passing by the window. The city at night always gave her a strange feeling, both peaceful and hollow, but tonight the silence inside the Tesla seemed amplified tenfold by the stillness of the man sitting beside her. Elon stared straight ahead, his gaze seeming to pierce through the buildings, the streets, and even the night itself. Clara didn't need to ask to know that his mind was racing with countless thoughts. Having worked with him for many years, she understood how he approached everything. He rarely spoke much, but once he made a decision, nothing could sway him. And yet, tonight, Elon's silence didn't feel like his usual calculated demeanor. It wasn't the silence of logic, but rather of something deeper, a feeling Clara had never quite seen in him before. She decided to break the silence. "You don't have to do this," Clara said, her voice gentle but firm. "To her, you're already a hero." She didn't expect an immediate response, and indeed, Elon didn't reply. His face, though calm as always, bore an unusually contemplative expression. Clara briefly wondered if her words had annoyed him. She knew Elon wasn't the type to appreciate anyone questioning his decisions. The car came to a stop in front of the private jet. Elon opened the door and stepped out, but turned back to look at her. His eyes, usually cold and pragmatic, now carried a different kind of light. "A hero doesn't just exist in someone's story," he said, his voice low but resolute. "Lisa deserves something real." That statement left Clara momentarily stunned. She realized that what drove Elon wasn't just responsibility, nor was it merely Lisa's admiration. This was something personal. She wasn't sure if she could fully grasp what was going through his mind, but one thing was clear: this was a rare moment when Elon let his heart lead the way, not his intellect. The pale fluorescent lights in the hospital hallway made the space feel even colder. Clara followed Elon, each of her steps heavy with tension and anticipation. She didn't speak, instead quietly observing Elon's silhouette. The man who normally commanded every room he entered now walked slowly, almost cautiously, as if the weight of the moment itself demanded it. A nurse led them through the corridors, her expression filled with quiet sympathy. When they stopped in front of a door decorated with crayon drawings of planets and spaceships, Clara felt a surge of emotion. The handwritten note on the door, "Welcome, Mr. Elon," made her chest tighten. In those few seconds, she felt the full weight of what was about to happen. Stepping into the room, Clara immediately saw Lisa. The little girl looked so small she was nearly swallowed by the white pillows on the hospital bed. Her body was frail, her strength clearly waning, but her eyes, those eyes shone brightly like two tiny flames, full of hope. When Lisa saw Elon, the light in her eyes grew even brighter, and a radiant smile spread across her pale face. "Mr. Elon," Lisa exclaimed, her voice weak but brimming with uncontainable joy. Elon walked over and sat down next to her bed. The inscrutable expression he often wore had disappeared, replaced by a gentleness Clara had never seen before. "I'm guessing you're Lisa," he said, his voice so warm that Clara had to turn away briefly to keep her emotions in check. "I hear you're a big fan of Mars." Lisa nodded enthusiastically, her eyes sparkling like little stars. "I've been practicing for zero gravity," she said, raising her arms to mimic floating in space. Her delicate laughter filled the room, lifting the weight that had been pressing down on everyone. Clara stood in the corner, quietly watching. Her heart felt like it was being squeezed as she took in the scene. Lisa, fragile and nearly drained of energy, managed to radiate a pure joy that seemed to make everyone forget pain and exhaustion. And Elon, the man who was usually consumed by grand, far-reaching dreams, was here, entirely present in this singular moment. When Lisa handed Elon a small notebook filled with shaky crayon drawings of spaceships and Mars, Clara watched as he took it with both hands, treating it as though it were something priceless. She couldn't hear everything they were saying to each other, but she didn't need to. The scene spoke volumes. In this moment, there was no billionaire or scientist in the room, only a little girl with a dream, and a man determined to make that dream come true. The next morning, the sound of the phone ringing shattered the stillness of Clara's office. On the other end of the line was Lisa's mother, her voice trembling with emotion. "Lisa is gone," she said, her words choked with tears yet filled with gratitude. She passed away in her sleep, with a smile still on her face. Thank you, Mr. Elon, for bringing her the greatest happiness in her final moments." Clara put down the phone, her heart a whirlwind of indescribable emotions. She walked slowly to Elon's office, where the soft light of the morning filtered through the large windows. When she delivered the news, Elon said nothing. He simply sat there, silently gazing into the space in front of him. On his desk lay the small paper star that Lisa had given him, a simple folded piece of paper, but now imbued with a significance far greater than anything else. Clara couldn't take her eyes off Elon's face. His eyes, normally cold and calculating, were now filled with a profound sadness, as if he were silently questioning himself for not being able to do more for Lisa. She had never seen him like this before. For a man accustomed to making monumental decisions that reshaped the world, he now appeared deeply affected by the fleeting life of a 9-year-old girl. "She left behind a star," Clara said, trying to keep her voice steady. "A star for you to take to Mars." Elon looked down at the paper star, his hand gently touching the delicate folds. "We'll do it," he said, his voice low and resolute, as if making an unbreakable promise. "Lisa will make it to Mars." A few months later, Clara stood in the control room at SpaceX, her eyes fixed on the large screen displaying the Falcon rocket, standing tall and ready for its historic journey. The atmosphere around her was tense, every gaze focused on the technical data, as the countdown ticked away like a slow, steady heartbeat. She glanced at Elon, who stood motionless beside her. The glow of the screen illuminated his face, making his familiar features seem almost unrecognizable. Clara had worked with Elon long enough to know that he often kept his distance from others, almost purposefully building a cold, impenetrable wall between himself and the world. But now she noticed something different. His eyes, usually sharp and focused, held a depth of emotion she had never seen before. Elon remained silent, but Clara could sense the restlessness in the air around him. Her mind drifted back over the past few months, from the moment Lisa passed away, to the decision to include her paper star on the rocket, and now, to this very moment as they prepared to send a piece of Lisa into space. What surprised Clara most wasn't the idea itself. Elon was always capable of the extraordinary, but the fact that he never let himself forget Lisa. Amid the countless massive projects of SpaceX, the thousands of monumental decisions, he had carved out space in his mind and heart for Lisa, as if she were an integral part of his journey. Clara recalled the words he had spoken when the paper star was being prepared. "She gave us her dream," he had said. "It's our responsibility to take it as far as we can." His voice had been so heartfelt that Clara had almost not recognized the man she thought was driven purely by logic and reason. The countdown began, pulling Clara back to the present. She saw Elon bow his head ever so slightly, his lips moving in what seemed to be a silent whisper she couldn't hear. Then he turned to her, his eyes unwavering. "This is for you, Lisa," he murmured, his voice steady and solemn, like an eternal vow. Those words made Clara's throat tighten. She was not only surprised that Elon still thought of Lisa in this pivotal moment, but also moved by how he did it quietly, without fanfare or the need for recognition. This was the man the world admired for his groundbreaking projects, but few knew that beneath the cold exterior lay a compassionate heart, one that listened to even the smallest dreams, and did everything to make them a reality. As the engines roared to life, Clara felt the ground tremble slightly beneath her feet. She looked up at the screen, watching as the rocket soared into the sky, tearing through the atmosphere. Lisa's paper star was now on its way to space, carrying with it the story of a little girl and the heart of the man who turned her dream into reality. In that moment, Clara couldn't hold back the surge of emotion that overwhelmed her. She had always admired Elon for his intellect and vision, but today, that admiration had transformed into reverence. She realized that greatness wasn't just about conquering Mars or changing the world. It was also found in the simple yet profound actions, like sending a small paper star beyond the boundaries of Earth, just to keep a promise to a 9-year-old girl. Clara whispered softly, as if speaking to herself, "Behind all the greatness, he truly has a boundless heart."